Dr. John Lewis, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Carl, it's great. I'm great. I'm doing great. How are you doing? It's great to see you again.
Oh, good to see you too. Really good to have you with me. Just so listeners know, Dr. John Lewis is the founder and creator of the Dr. Lewis Nutrition Company and the daily brain care for optimal brain health that we've been well, selling here for over a year, probably a year and a half. And I've been on it it's going to be 2 years this summer, but so for the iHeart listeners, you can't see this, but for the people who see this on YouTube later, I'm showing a bottle of it right here. And this has been such a great product. Let me just give you a few testimonials clumped into one. So many of our people who take it talk about their clarity of thought, uh, lack of brain fog, and they even report sleeping better. And you know what? That's a beautiful thing. We happen to deal with a lot of the, let's say, elderly populations, 60s, but a lot of 70s, a lot of 80s, and some in their 90s. So, great product, folks. If you want to learn more or purchase a bottle, you go to carlsterling.com, and right on the front page, you'll see a link to Dr. Lewis Daily Brain Care. You need to go there, check it out. I take it. I've been taking it almost 2 years. It's great. So enough out of me. What's new on your end? I know you've got some new research.
We do, Carl. It's exciting because even though, as you know, I'm not in academics full time anymore, I'm still doing my best to publish new information to continue providing that level of scientific credibility that I think is so important for all of us, especially for those of us in the dietary supplement industry, just because in general, a lot of times people think of dietary supplement companies as being all about the marketing and not so much about the science, which I'm sure is true in many cases. But one very interesting finding that we just published in the last year is this relationship between the TH1 to the TH2 ratio, and I'll explain that in a moment, and cognitive functioning. So, what do we mean by the TH1 to TH2 ratio? That's a paradigm or a concept, if you will, in our immune system's functioning. So, generally speaking, TH1 is our pro inflammatory side, and TH2 is our anti inflammatory side. So I know you know this very well because you're dealing with people with various types of chronic inflammation all the time. But one thing I want our listeners to understand is that inflammation is not always a bad thing. If you are involved in an auto accident, or you have an injury playing sports, or you even have an infection coming on, you actually want, and not only want it, you need inflammation. Those inflammatory signals in any kind of an acute situation, are very important for recovery and even survival. So let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater and make the statement that all inflammation is bad for us. It's actually needed in the acute situation. In the chronic situation, though, that's where it's related to neurodegeneration and diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all these things that are killing us. And so, one way that we can look at inflammation in general is this TH1 to TH2 ratio. It had never actually been characterized before, Carl, in people with Alzheimer's disease. Our paper is actually the first one that's done that. We also compared those ratios, we actually calculated 6 of them, and we compared them to a healthy sample of people that we had in another study, wildly different. I mean, it was just phenomenally, strikingly different how TH1 dominant the Alzheimer's folks were. And then the people who were healthy had basically values around 1 or 2. And then over that 12-month period, in response to taking daily brain care, five of the 6 of those ratios went back toward balance, although not anywhere close to 1 or 2, but at least they went supposedly in the right direction, or at least less TH1 dominant. And then, very interestingly enough, those changes, that rebalancing, was correlated with lots of different measures of cognitive function. So that was kind of like the cherry on top of the cake to observe. Yeah, or clinical. That's where it really got exciting. So that's some just very cool information that again, has been published by us for the first time in people looking at Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, I remember us talking about Alzheimer's last time, and then, just in talking in general, you and me. Um, there's, but now let me ask you this. For those listening, we had no script ahead of time. I'm just throwing out questions. But I want to hear what your thoughts are about this. It seems that, according to a lot of the experts out there, like we had Dr. Robert Lustig on recently from UC Berkeley. He's best-selling author and all this, medical doctor. He talks about, as well as many others, who talk about the driver or a primary driver for a lot of chronic disease is a mitochondrial dysfunction. And when we look at mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction, diabetes, insulin resistance, chronic illnesses. I mean, I'm just throwing this out there. What are we dealing with inflammation wise that way? And how does it tie in with brain health? I mean, we know it does, but there's so many connections because everything's connected to everything else. All these things, especially diabetes, well, all these things tend to lead later in life to different forms of dementia, including oftentimes, I shouldn't say all the time, but it's so common to see a diabetic having dementia later, or Alzheimer's. So can you just enlighten us a little bit there about the various connections, the pathways in this?
It's fascinating, right? I mean, like you just said, every cell has a mitochondria. And so when you think about that dysfunction over time, I mean, the one thing that I think is helpful for people to understand about cellular replication, and if they don't know, our cells, all of our cells go through this life and death process called apoptosis. But when you expose yourself to bad nutrition, being sedentary, God forbid, smoking, drinking alcohol or too much alcohol, having insomnia, not sleeping well, not managing your stress. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I look at the world as, nutrition being 1A, and that includes dietary supplements, and then exercise being 1B. I do rank nutrition a little bit higher than exercise in my view of the world. But if you're not engaging in, let's call those behaviors to the positive side, if you're engaging them to the negative side, when it comes to our cellular replication process, I think the best analogy that I can think of is take a picture of any person's face, put it on a copy machine, and then take that copy and put it on the copy machine, and then keep taking the copy. As soon as it comes off, pull the copy and keep copying the copy of the copy till you get to about 100 of those. And then go back and look at the very original one, the very clear, perfect picture of that person's face. And then look at the 100th copy of the copy of all those different copies. And you'll probably see a copy that's barely recognizable compared to the very first one. That's the best analogy I can think of when it comes to how our cells replicate over time. And so if we're not repairing our cells properly with good habits, then this is what ultimately leads to all that cellular and mitochondrial dysfunction that he's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I love that analogy. It's perfect. A copy of the copy of the copy until you get it's unrecognizable. So we're going to head out to a break in just a minute, folks. We're with Dr. John Lewis today. And we go back now a couple years at least, probably about 3 years. And Dr. Lewis Nutrition, the daily brain care is what I take. I love it. And I want to talk when we get back about some of the ingredients and how these are, how you chose these as what to put in, because, there are people who question it. They come out, well, I can get this stuff in food. Okay, good luck. Yeah, all I can say is good luck. Yeah, because you're not going to get it. It's not going to be the same. So we're heading to break. This is Your Health Matters on News Radio 570 WSYR. We'll be back after this short break. We're back. We're with Dr. John Lewis. And I love these conversations with you. Just kind of thinking as you're describing things. These cells replicating copies of copies of copies, mitochondrial dysfunction. And for those who are not aware, I just want to describe one thing. Mitochondria, okay. Every cell has mitochondria. This is like, think of the battery in your car. You've got to have that, or your car's it's not gonna go, right? Especially if you have an electric vehicle, right? You've got to have the battery. So that is the power pack for your car, at least to get it started in a gas engine and keep it going in an electric, right? So we need our batteries and our cells, our mitochondria, that would be, we need them to be healthy, because if they're not healthy, this can lead to, and one of the words you used, and I'm going to just say it now, in our last interview, was the pathetic situation of so much diabetes. And I'm sorry, people. I am so sorry if I offend anybody. But when it comes down to it, we're the only creatures on Earth who have a rampant, like almost like a pandemic of sorts of diabetes, an epidemic. Giraffe, the giraffes and the lions and the cougars and the monkeys and they don't have diabetes. They just eat what they're supposed to eat. And we do other stuff because there's so much out there that we can eat that's not good. It's not good for our body, our mitochondria. And then we get all this insulin problems. We get insulin resistance. We get diabetes. We get cancer. We get all kinds of crap. It's horrible. So I just had to get off my chest all that stuff. Because these days I'm not as nice on the radio as I used to be, Dr. Lewis. Because I look at these people. I don't know if they're listening. I know you're listening, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you, because without you, we wouldn't be here.
That's right.
Can we talk about again, the people who this hardly ever happens. Usually, just come in, they pick up a bottle, they try it, and then they're on it for forever. So I love that. Now, people probably have a right to be somewhat skeptical, because there are a lot of stuff out there. And it's just not formulated well, but it's marketed like it is. And so yours is top quality, top shelf. What ingredients are you using, and why are they important, and how are you getting these ingredients? Like, in what formulation is each ingredient, and how are they effective?
Well, Carl, that's a great point.
Not only how, but how and why. Okay, I'm so sorry. I think we froze up for a second there, but
okay.
I see. So how and why are these effective, these ingredients that you're using?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that in this day and age of, poor soil, dirty air, dirty water, there's so much pollution. And I'm not even talking about, whether or not you believe in climate change. That's a different topic. But just all the chemical inputs that humans have put into the environment. Well, certainly since the Industrial Revolution, and definitely since the Green Revolution, when we started using heavy amounts of pesticides, herbicides, and other minerals to try to generate more crop production. And so all of that has had a deleterious effect on our food quality. And so 100 years ago, I would probably say our ancestors back then, especially most people were also involved in having a farm or a garden, raising their own food, that you probably had much better quality of content of food back in those days, especially before the Green Revolution in the 1960s. Now with everybody, I don't have a garden. We have some fruit trees in our yard, but I'm not raising most of the food we eat. I buy it all at Costco or Whole Foods, but we have very much poorer quality of food than we did, again, 100 years ago. And so I would argue to anybody, regardless of how well that you think you are eating, you probably have some gaps in your nutrition in terms of some of the things that are really beneficial for you that you're just simply not getting enough of in the diet. So the polysaccharides in our formula are so important and so dynamic, and yet the average person, I guarantee, is not getting them in your food. So number one, when it comes to the polysaccharides from aloe vera, I mean, again, we have some here in Miami, we have some aloe vera growing in our yard, but I'm not out there every day, snipping leaves and sucking gel down. Number one, it tastes nasty. And number two, it's 99% water. So even if I had a plantation of aloe vera here, I couldn't possibly eat enough of the gel to get enough of the polysaccharide content in a concentrated amount to make any real physiological or therapeutic difference. So we've done the hard work for you. We've taken all that water out, dehydrated it, and then extracted the polysaccharides from all the other materials in there. It's not just polysaccharides, it's got, lots of different nutrients and phytonutrients. But the key ones, the real key ones that no one is getting from his or her food is the polysaccharide, the ace-mannan, the acetylated polymannose. It's got several synonyms that come from aloe vera. And then let's talk about rice bran for a second. So 70 to 80, from what I understand, 70 to 80% of the rice sold in the world is white rice. That's the white endosperm that's like the last major layer of the rice kernel. So you have the husk or the hull on the outside. That's the inedible part we can't consume. That gets taken off first once the rice is milled and brought into the milling process. And then the bran is the next layer. That's what gives brown rice its brown color. That's the rice bran. Well, again, most of the world doesn't want to eat brown rice. It's stripped off and it's either thrown away or fed to livestock. So the irony is the domesticated animals are actually eating the best part of the rice kernel compared to the farmer and the humans. And so again, most people are not getting the most nutritious, the most vital part of the rice kernel. It's not even being consumed. If you're eating just white rice, you're not getting it. I like to eat brown. I don't know about you. I like to eat brown rice several times a week. But I would say too that even if you're eating several servings of brown rice every week, if you're past middle age, if you have one of these health challenges we've already talked a little bit about, you probably need more nutritional support than just what you would get alone in your food. So just those two ingredients alone, not even counting some of the others, but just those two ingredients in daily brain care alone are two ingredients that the average person is not getting in his or her diet. And that's where daily brain care can help you fill in the gaps when you're getting, a lot of your macronutrients from other sources, but then you provide a few hundred milligrams or a couple of grams of this stuff every day. And now it's like providing this really key sustenance that all of your cells need to function properly. And oh, by the way, you don't need, if you think about whatever the average American eats today, I don't know, is it 2,500, 3,000 calories? I don't even know what that number is, but we're only talking a couple of hundred milligrams to maybe a few grams per day, again, depending on your age and your health condition. So out of several thousand or a couple of thousand calories, we're only talking about literally a couple of calories of energy that your body will utilize in these polysaccharides that just are like dynamic and magic for health promoting effects.
Yeah, 3 capsules is 8 calories. There you go.
Exactly.
I don't know. I've been taking 4 a day. I just do. I don't. Has it helped me? Elizabeth is here with me. Does it help me to make me smarter? Yeah. No. Well, I actually, we got to go to break in 1 minute. I almost lost track of the clock, folks. But we are with Dr. John Lewis. So, I have to say this just because I just have to say it. Last time we had you on, somebody said, well, this sounds like an infomercial. It is. It's information for you to learn about something out there that's actually formulated perfectly. And there's so much science behind this. There's so much research you've done in this arena about people with Alzheimer's and dementia and all these other things. We can talk about maybe studies when we get back from the break, but this is an opportunity, folks. I'm always talking about opportunities to really take advantage of something that is proven to be good for you. It won't break your bank. And with that, we've got to head out. We'll be back here on Your Health Matters, News Radio 570 WSYR in a couple of minutes. All right, we are back with Dr. John Lewis. Well, I find it really interesting. First of all, the way I took out the last segment, just want to say, really, you know me by now. This is 13 months and like 58 episodes doing this show. What we're really trying to do is educate. And if I don't believe in something, then I'm not having the person on the show. I believe in this product 100%. Why go to the store and waste $50 on something that it has no proof behind it? And some probably marketing that just draws you in, like Dr. Robert Lustig said last week, folks. A lot of these labels, especially food labels. Let's talk about the food labels. I'm not even talking supplement labels. They're useless.
Right.
Because the organic this or the natural that or the cage free whatever,
Right.
it really a lot of times is completely irrelevant when you look at the whole picture of what's really behind the product. But with this product, we know we have something solid. And I was wondering, just to let you take the reins here, I'd love to hear more about how it helps brain specifically, and then more about research. I'd love to learn more about what you've been finding over the years, because this has been many years you've been at this.
Absolutely. That's a great question, because a lot of times people, it's fascinating. I mean, as well as I do, over the years, you think of nutrition and you think of how it affects the heart, the gut, the liver, the kidneys, maybe even the skin. But yet the brain, people almost look at the brain kind of like living in a bubble in a sense, like they don't think of how nutrition affects the brain like it does other organs. So very specific to our research, what we showed, Carl, is that over a 12-month period in our Alzheimer's study, we showed just under a 300% increase in the adult stem cells according to CD14 cells. So we know through other research that CD14s can actually turn into neurons. So this is a very significant aspect of our research that linked the improvement in the neuronal increase to this cognitive function increase. So that was one very significant finding.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you go back? C14?
CD14, yes.
What is that before it becomes a neuron?
Before it becomes a neuron, it's just a CD14 cell. It's another subset of our immune system.
I had no idea. I didn't even know I could know that. Like, I love it when I learn things I didn't know I could learn. That was never on my radar. Now, this to me is one of the coolest things in the world, because if it turns into a neuron and it can become connected to other ones, bingo.
That's exactly
right. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So I'm glad you. So there was a very important finding in our Alzheimer's study. Wow. And then in our multiple sclerosis study, we showed a really nice, I don't remember the percentage change, but it was statistically significant, an improvement in a protein called epidermal growth factor. So obviously for people with MS, we know that demyelination of the central nervous system is part of that whole pathology of MS. Well, guess what, folks? EGF, this epidermal growth factor, this protein, is very involved in, guess what? Remyelination. So this is one of the yes, exactly. So remyelinating the central nervous system is one of the reasons why we believe that people with MS responded so well to this formula. We had just incredible changes. I mean, I don't even think in the last time I was with you, we even talked that much about the MS study. I think we mostly focused just on the Alzheimer's study.
Well, I'm really interested in learning more about the remyelinization, if that's the correct word, because, we know that in MS, especially PPMS, we often see myelin sheath sort of starting to break down, unravel, bladder issues, a lot of times leg issues, though, moving the legs, and then all the other types of MS. But tell us, so how is this working with that? Because that offers a lot of hope.
Well, the epidermal growth factor is another one of these bioactive molecules that the immune system sort of oversees. In other words, cytokines and growth factors are these signaling messengers that the immune system uses to respond to. So I guess MS is kind of has a dual classification. It's got one group of people that would classify it as neurodegeneration, and another group of people that would classify it as an autoimmune issue. And maybe same people classify it as both. But regardless, you have these links, just like we know in our research, between the brain, the central nervous system, and the immune system. I mean, we've shown this in all of our research. Same thing in MS. We know that the immune system is dysregulated, and it's kind of the chicken or the egg phenomenon. We don't know which occurs first. If somehow the central nervous system gets dysregulated or the immune system gets dysregulated, and then the interaction of one or the other with that dysregulation then causes the other switch to flip, and then it gets dysregulated. But regardless, we know that obviously once you have MS, you start down this journey of, like you were just saying, all these different types of functional and physical negative side effects or negative issues. And so when someone starts down that road of having that demyelination, that's obviously very tragic. And ultimately, the end result of that is you basically end up in a wheelchair, right? I mean, you basically become so dysfunctional that you really don't have the strength or the ability to move anymore. So if there's something out there that can help not only stop it, but actually start that remyelination process, I mean, again, that's huge. And as I mentioned in our study, we showed that we statistically significantly increased the amount of EGF, this epidermal growth factor, which has been shown in lots of other research that it's very important for that remyelination process. So going back, how does that translate to the clinical side? Well, on the clinical side, much like the ADAS-Cog in the Alzheimer study, which is the gold standard for assessing cognitive function that we looked at and showed clinically and statistically significant improvements in the MS study, we used something called the FAMS. That's the Functional Assessment of Multiple Sclerosis. That's the gold standard for assessing functional assessment in people with MS. And again, we showed almost every subscale. I think there were only 2 that were non-significant, but they were going in the right direction of improving. But all the others were statistically significantly improved over the 12-month intervention. So it's kind of like in the Alzheimer's study, you take the CD14 response and you say, okay, those CD14s were becoming neurons, and that's why people were starting to think again and remember things again and have cognitive function. Same thing in the MS study. You have this increase in the epidermal growth factor. So now you have people with, I think, different types of issues. I mean, again, I'd have to go back and look at some individual cases, but you have all these improvements in functional assessment that just were like radically different. So it's a very nice, interesting correlation, but circling all the way back to those were 2 of the things that we looked at that were just very profound for people with neurodegeneration.
Yeah, that's just before we go to break. I'm just thinking about the CD14 becoming neurons is absolutely beautiful. I didn't know anything about that, and this makes me so happy. This just adds another dimension to what could be possible for and delaying progression of certain things, or maybe even reversing or just staving off onset. Plus the remyelinization. We're going to go to break. This is Your Health Matters News Radio 570 WSYR. I'll be right back with Dr. John Lewis. Okay, we're back with Dr. John Lewis. So I have to go back and repeat this part about CD14. This is like the best news of the day. You made my day, made my week, because we're always talking on the show here about neurons, neuroplasticity, and how the brain is moldable and you can learn new things. Even right now, as I'm sitting here talking with you, I am learning things. This means that there are actually synaptic firing patterns happening between neurons that are going to allow me the wonderful opportunity to learn and hopefully remember, right? So I write notes because I want to remember better. But if we can learn to move better, we can do brain health, just staying active, getting blood and oxygen to the brain and all the neural chemicals that are produced when we're moving, folks. We talked about this till I'm blue in the face, and I'm blue in the face right now because this is something we talk about every week almost. But now we're talking about possible creation of new neurons, remyelinization of myelin sheath that could be breaking down, causing disruption in brain nervous system messaging to our limbs, our digits, or whatever organs, maybe. Let's talk about. You have some findings regarding immune function or immune findings.
Yes.
Please share with us about that.
Well, I think if COVID did nothing else for the average person, it made everyone aware of how important our immune system is. I mean, I think we all understood previous to that our immune system is our first line of defense against virus, bacteria, fungus, any kind of pathogen. But I think it took it to a new level in terms of getting people to recognize how truly important our immune system is. So one of the things that Daily Brain Care does for us, primarily through the polysaccharide content and a couple of the other ingredients as well, but it turns on all of our different components of our immune system that, again, help us not only prevent infection, but also keep all of our other organ systems in balance and regulated properly. That's one of the other really key roles that the immune system plays. So, for example, in the Alzheimer's study, we showed an improvement in the CD4 to CD8 ratio. That's the ratio of your helper cells to your cytotoxic cells. And that's important not just for people with Alzheimer's, but for all of us. We want that ratio to be optimized as much as possible, especially once we hit middle age, and keeping it elevated and optimized. So that's very important. And we also don't want our CD8 cells overstimulated, meaning we don't want too much killing action going on all the time. We actually want more helper cells than we do cytotoxic cells. And then in the MS study, we showed a really nice finding as well from the CD95 to CD34 cell. This is actually encoded in something called the FAS gene. That's the FAS gene. And that's also similar to the CD4 to CD8 ratio. It's like an overall assessment of how well your immune system is functioning. And we showed a nice increase in the MS study as well. So when you look at those two findings together in combination, it just paints a really nice picture of how well these polysaccharides can keep our immune system over. It's like an overall marker, like from the helicopter view, as they say. It's making sure that our immune system stays surveillant, active, modulated. It's not overstimulated. It's not depressed or suppressed. It's actually right in that sweet spot. It stays balanced and it stays ready for action. And that's very important too, because, a lot of times we need something to stimulate. For example, in the case of cancer or something that's just, hitting us, we obviously need something to boost the immune system's functioning to help overcome or get over that hurdle. And then, of course, we have, things like, I'm sure you've probably had people on before talking about something like, corticosteroids being like suppressant type activity on the immune system. So obviously you don't want people over relying on corticosteroids. You want to just, use them temporarily and then that's it, if any. But you want to keep your immune system in that sweet spot where it's balanced, where it's almost like, ready for action, in the sense of it either needs to turn on or shut down a bit, depending on what you're dealing with. So those two findings, Carl, were just really nice in terms of helping us validate at the cellular level what's going on. And then again, also linking these improvements in overall immune function with either cognitive function in the Alzheimer's study or more physical function, quality of life findings in the MS study. Very, very nice findings.
Oh, yeah. So there's really so much to this. There's so many moving parts, so many layers. My brain is spinning right now with ideas, but if you really just look at, like, one of the last phrases you used was at the cellular level. I think that's something that for a lot of people, maybe, well, I'm just saying because it used to be hard for me. Cellular level, how can I even imagine that? I can look at my finger, I can look at my, you're right. But no, at a cellular level, we are made up of I don't know how many billion
There is
cells.
estimated between 30 and 40 trillion cells. We don't know the exact number, but 30 to 40 trillion.
And they all,
We can't even imagine it.
we need them to be healthy. There's 30 to 40 trillion battery packs. They just got a mitochondria in every cell. And when those start to, let's say, diminish in function or become mitochondrial dysfunction, especially in excess, I mean, we're really in a situation where it's very threatening to our health, our longevity, and health span. So I love the work you do. I just love the work you do. I've ever since Eric, our friend Eric Durack introduced me, I'm like, man, because here's the thing, folks. Eric Durack doesn't introduce me to people who aren't top shelf. And I don't think I've ever brought you a guest. I know I haven't ever brought you a guest who wasn't top of their game. And that's why Dr. Lewis is here. And yes, I am a big proponent, big proponent of endorser of his product, but I'll tell you why. Because there's so much crap out there. And I don't deal with crap. I'm only going to get the best. I want my brain to function well till the day I die. You know, my mom, who passed away actually 4 months ago, she was cognitively sharp as a tack till about 24 hours before she passed. Now, she didn't take the formula, but it's just, the thing is I want my brain to last that long too, versus her mother, not to go off on a tangent, but her mother really didn't know who anybody was for the last 15 years of her life. She had Alzheimer's. She was only 77 when she died. My grandmother, my mom's mother. So, and I remember that very well, wondering why was grandma so confused and didn't know us. And we were just there, yesterday, and today she doesn't know who we are. And it's just so sad. And a lot of people are unfortunately dealing with this. But you got to go check it out, folks. Go to carlsterling.com. That's Carl with a K. And go right on the front page or the sponsor page. Right on the front page is going to be the Dr. Lewis Daily Brain Care. Check it out. Click the link. Buy a bottle. Try it out. And you're probably going to sleep better, too. So we only have about a minute and a half left. But Dr. Lewis, I want to say, first of all, thanks a million for being here. Do you have any takeaway message for people?
I do, Carl. I want to just highlight very quickly something that you mentioned that was very important, and that is not taking crap or not even being sucked into, great marketing that may have no real substance behind it. I just want people to know that this is my life's work. I wasn't, going into research to become wealthy. Certainly not. I don't think anybody goes into academics to become wealthy. If they do, you're like me, not very smart. And so this is my life's work. I stand behind what I sell. I put my name on the label, and, my family and I, we all take it just like you do. We've been taking it for years. So I want anybody to benefit from this, and I hope they will. And I'm always available to answer questions as well. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, thank you, doctor. It's always great to see you. And every time we talk, my head is spinning because I learned so much. The CD14 to neurons really turns me on. Man. I love this one. And everybody who's listening, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for Hunter Hillers, Phil Mercado, and our producer, Kyla. Thanks for helping us out so much, making our job so easy. It's a pleasure to be here. We'll be back soon. Next week, we'll be back. Elizabeth be with me as we talk about more stuff. This is Your Health Matters, 570 WSWR. Have a great week.